Our RTI webinar series, Maximizing Tier 1 with the Common Core. Our guests today are Dr. Pam Brunig with Progressive Bridges. It's an educational services company. And Jay Burcham was going to be with us but was unexpectedly called away, so I will be replacing him. And my name is Julia Grayson, and I am Director of Client Services. Hi Pam, how are you doing this afternoon?
Great, Julia. How are you doing?
I'm good. I look forward to the webinar. So
yeah, me too.
Yeah, let's just jump in so we don't spend a lot of time, and then we'll go through it. And everybody, just so you know, we'll record this for you. It'll be available later on our website at www.goleaps.com. So let's just jump right in.
Okay, we're going to start with some related questions that came in about maximizing Tier 1 with the Common Core. And I know many of you are already LEAPS users, so you're going to see some examples using LEAPS today. But even if you're not, I'm sure you'll benefit from the webinar today. Here are some of the related questions that came in. First of all, talking about college and career readiness and what does that have to do with behavior, and we're going to examine that. Another question came in about how LEAPS is aligned to the Common Core standards, and so we'll show you how they are and where you can find that information. And then also, how can LEAPS help us teach the Common Core standards? And actually, using LEAPS is a great way to get started by, in teaching the Common Core, regardless of what subject area you teach, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. And then, how could one provide direct instruction for behavior skills for a group, but still individualized for a few students? That was a great question that came in. So let's just keep moving here. And you'll see in this slide we're talking about the LEAPS Common Core alignment, and you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen there are three main areas, the speaking, listening, and writing area, that LEAPS is aligned with. And I highlighted for you with this asterisks some of the specific areas that are definitely a part of every LEAPS lesson. The speaking and listening conversations, those discussions, are those collaborative discussions about different things regarding behavior, are very motivating to students, and so that's one of the reasons why it's a great match, the Common Core and LEAPS. And you'll see some of the ideas of using speech and language, developing that over the years, whether it's K1 or moving up through the grades 6 through 12, how they need to evaluate information and presenting information, as well as some of the writing things. And argument is really one of the key things. You know, LEAPS provides some great information, some research-based information that is great for students to explore even further using research and using argument and support to provide more information to other students. So the key here is that we want to provide students with high-quality, engaging content as they practice Common Core skills, and LEAPS kind of allows that to happen.
All right. Thank you, Pam. For those of you that are LEAPS licensees, this will look familiar to you. And those of you that may not be, we wanted to show you how quick and easy it is to access the Common Core standards. On the Curriculum tab, in our first module, there's the training videos and tools, and there's a full correlation to both our beginners and our lower and higher maturity. And then if you'll notice, in each module, the first place is the Common Core, for example, self-control. So those are the lessons that are correlated to that specific module, so it's a much smaller document. But that's a great way to access the Common Core and help your teachers know, which lessons to teach and how they correlate back. When you open it, what you'll find is the beginning. I'm showing you the beginners right now, but the higher and lower looks very similar. You'll have a table of contents that you can click on it, and it'll take you directly to that. And then as you see, the lessons are correlated directly to the standard, along with the link that we've put on there for you back to the standard, so you can help work within the Common Core.
Great. Thank you, Julia. That's a great explanation and illustration of how that all works. The other thing that LEAPS has a lot to do with is college and career readiness. And I highlighted three of the many areas of college and career readiness that really is appropriate in matching with LEAPS. And you'll notice the social emotional skills, and that's difficult to find curriculum that really does relate to some of those things, but obviously that's what the focus of LEAPS is. So when we go to think about preparing our students for career and college, going through some of the social emotional skills are certainly things we need to do, and obviously our students need some direct instruction with. And Leaps Lessons provides all of that. The other areas here are higher order thinking skills, and then the academic success and employability skills. And as you look down through here, you'll note too that Leaps Lessons incorporate problem solving when we're talking about what to do in certain social situations. They do incorporate reasoning and critical thinking, synthesis and putting things together. They also incorporate a lot of things related to intellectual openness, asking questions, engagement, teamwork and collaboration, and then especially effective communication and different types of communication. So those are all ways that you can tie those elements together, whether you're a LEAPS user right now or you're someone who may be exploring that idea.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Pam. So
one of the things I wanted to do was go ahead and give you some 3 simple steps when you start to apply readiness skills to any kind of curriculum, whether it's LEAPS or somewhere else. And these 3 simple steps are all related to those college and career readiness items that we talked about. One is to employ technology in extending and involving students in research. That's a huge part of the Common Core as well as readiness skills. Anything related to analytical or critical thinking. Another way you can start is really to provide a safe place for honest discussion. And a lot of times we forget this, but if we want students to communicate appropriately and really dig in and have differing opinions, but then have thoughtful discussion and respectful, open discussion among each other, that's something that we need to foster a place for, as well as teach them skills on how to do that. And then the third thing is to provide a variety of enriching discussion opportunities that involve listening and speaking, writing and reading, all focused around motivating topics. And again, the motivating topics is where you're going to get obviously the student buy-in. But again, I think a lot of the social emotional skills, since we don't typically teach that very often, this is a perfect way for you to start working with college and career readiness using LEAPS.
yeah, great. Thank you, Pam. One of the things we always hear from the educators is that the students really enjoy it because they do get to talk about things they normally wouldn't before, and it does provide that place for those discussions. So that's a great step to point out.
Right, and that's why I think LEAPS is a great way to kind of step into that idea, because that's a lot different than some of us are used to doing as we teach. So
Right.
let's just take a quick look at the multi-tiered systems of support, and I'm going to be giving you some examples of a teacher and a team and how they are using LEAPS and the Common Core and how they're working those two things together to get what they need as far as documentation for individual students as well. And I just wanted to remind us, of course, when we're talking about Tier 1, we're really talking about all students, and we're looking for at least 80% of them to be successful in whatever we're doing, but of course the goal is for all of them to be successful. And if we can just keep on moving, Julia.
Yep, sure. Here we go.
All right, thank you. And then we want to think about, as we walk through these examples, I'll be highlighting these steps of the problem-solving process, the defining the problem, the analyzing the problem, creating an intervention plan, creating a monitoring plan, and then evaluating results. And so we'll explore all of those in each of these examples. And our first example is really talking about middle school C. In middle school C, their identified problem in this situation is that students are engaged in disrespectful peer behaviors during classroom instruction. Obviously, if that's going on, open discussion would be difficult to have if they're already not respecting each other without open discussion. So in this case, they determined that 70% of the students on their 6th grade team as a whole displayed this disrespectful behavior toward their peers. So their idea was, excuse me, their idea was that we wanted to make sure that they teach this appropriate behavior. And they also realized that 10% of the students are severely involved in repeated disrespectful behaviors. So they realized it was most of the students, but there were some that were probably more severe or more critical than others, so we might need to watch them a little differently. When they analyzed the problem, they determined that if they taught the students how to respect each other and had opportunities in class to practice that skill, that behavior would be reduced. So when they went to create the intervention, you can see what they did. Because LEAPS is aligned to the Common Core, they decided to, all of them on the 6th grade team, teach LEAPS instruction twice a week as part of the Reading and Language Arts class. Obviously the Common Core matchup with alignment was very, right on target with Reading and Language Arts. So that's where they decided to do it for the whole team so that all students would be involved. They decided to start with the LEAPS Classroom Challenge, and they focused on respect and friends because those were their areas of concern. And then they decided to use the LEAPS behavior rubrics for those specific students with more intense needs because they wanted to be sure to progress monitor them daily. So for all students, they did the teaching and they used Classroom Challenge to pave their way with the lesson plans. But then for those 10% that they knew needed more progress monitoring, they used the behavior rubrics for those. So that's a definite situation that answers the one question that was asked earlier. When they created the monitoring plan, they decided on a weekly count of those incidences. And with the results, you can see that their intervention was successful. They were asking these questions overall. At the end of 3 weeks or so, they decided that this was successful, that those things had minimized. And as they discussed those results, they did determine that perhaps there would be need for a Tier 2 intervention for those who needed that extra support. Some of those who were monitored with a daily rubric needed a little more LEAPS, but the majority of the students had already benefited. Julia?
That's a great story. It's always fun to hear those stories that you bring us from the schools and the real-world results that we're getting. For those of you that are the LEAPS licensee, and again, those of you that are just maybe exploring LEAPS, the Classroom Challenge is a very quick, easy tool. You simply pick the behavior word that you're interested in or the area that you're working on, as they were working with respect. The educator picks the answer to 3 questions, and once you've done that, out of the 242 lesson plans, LEAPS will identify, based on the way you've answered that observational questions on your students, the lesson plans that are appropriate for your students. And we give you an order. You only teach the highlighted ones, so you teach the orange first and then the purple second. And additionally, you can save this challenge because, as you saw, they were doing it over a week or 2 period of time, so they needed to save the challenge so the answers would be the same and be able to go back and access those lesson plans that they were working on. Additionally, you can make notes on this as you go through, and as you teach it, if you note and document it, then at the end you have a fully printable report that's going to show you all of the lesson plans that were recommended, and as you see, as we documented it, we were able to show that we had taught those lesson plans. So that's a great, quick way to do one of those interventions for those kids with the Tier 1. It is your PBS Tier 1 tool. And the rubrics are also, I just wanted to, we didn't talk about it earlier, but on your curriculum tab, right under that Common Core, is a rubric that is correlated also to the lessons within that module. So I just wanted to show you some of the ways and how quickly and easily you can access the data and your lesson plans and get a report that shows what you've done. So
right, that's a great point, Julia. And I've heard many teachers and administrators say that one of the beauties of LEAPS is it really only takes 5 minutes to get ready.
Right, exactly. I think you have another story for us, don't you?
I do. And this time it's of a single teacher, and this teacher happens to be a science teacher. So we're talking secondary science teacher, but you can obviously transpose this into any teacher for it to fit. In her classroom, the students have difficulty in engaging in meaningful class discussions. And of course, this is very important to this teacher because she knows how to teach the Common Core. She needs to have those students start to dig deeper and think more critically and really do that group problem solving. And so she knows this is an important behavior for them to engage in, that they can all feel comfortable doing this. So that's her goal, and at least 60% of the students in her class do not engage meaningfully in group discussions on science content, even when they know they will be tested on it afterwards, or even if they're getting a grade. Many poor test scores also reflect the fact, so she has data to support as well as her observation. The problem's occurring because if these students were taught how to communicate and listen effectively, she feels like the problem would be decreased. So that's kind of her goal. to help them learn how to communicate and listen effectively. Notice it really doesn't have to do with science per se, and I wanted to point that out because that is one of the beauties of LEAPS, is that it's so flexible in use. So her intervention was to utilize LEAPS content to provide instruction in that area of need, and then use activities to allow them to practice those new skills as part of her science instruction. So she knew immediately she wanted to do things related to communication, so she went to that LEAPS Classroom Challenge, as you just saw, and she used the communication tool and then got a pathway of lesson plans for her to follow. As part of her monitoring, what she did was start to keep track of the number of students engaged and participating appropriately in these class discussions. So in addition to teaching them the skill of communicating, she was also making sure that she had opportunities for them to practice those skills in her classroom. Her results showed that it was effective, this intervention was effective for at least 80%, and she did ask those questions, obviously. She actually found that she really did not need to do a Tier 2 intervention, that everyone pretty much came on board. Between learning how to communicate effectively and then having those opportunities to practice, and even the students who struggled a little bit more were able to benefit from the majority of the other students doing well with that, then she felt like they were all on board. So it was a valuable opportunity for her to do in her science class.
Great. Thank you, Pam. Those are always interesting and fun stories to hear about. So hopefully this was an informative webinar for you. We keep them short because we know you're very busy. What I'd like to do is let you know that if you have questions about LEAPS, you can call us or send us an email, and we'll be glad to do that and answer any of the questions you may have. And Dr. Bruni can be reached at Progressive Bridges. That is our contact information. Again, we do appreciate you coming, and thank you very much for spending your afternoon with us. Dr. Bruni, do you have anything you'd like to say before we part?
Sure, just one thing. If you are watching these examples and you are saying to yourself, wow, our team doesn't do that, or we struggle with intervention and problem solving, feel free to give me a call, drop me an email. That's part of what Progressive Bridges does. We go to schools and districts and help and support in those areas.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody. And again, I want to remind you that this will be posted on our website at www.goleaps.com. You'll be able to get the presentation as well as listen to the broadcast again if you so choose or want to share it with other people. We'll also have it on our YouTube channel. Again, thank you for attending and have a great day.